The Empire didn't just hunt Jedi, it turned their own into weapons. Former protectors became executioners, and every single one of them has a story that's darker than you'd expect. Today I'm breaking down every Imperial Inquisitor and everything we need to know about them, starting with the one who ran the entire operation, the Grand Inquisitor. Here's the poetic irony that makes this guy unforgettable. He was a Jedi Temple Guard. His entire job was to protect and police other Jedi. He knew their training protocols, their combat techniques, their psychological weaknesses, all of it. And then he used every bit of that knowledge to hunt them down. He's a Padawan, a species that already looks like a nightmare before the dark side even touches them. Tall, gaunt, pale skin, sunken eyes, the kind of face that tells you something terrible is about to happen before a single word leaves his mouth. Pair that with a red, double-bladed, spinning lightsaber built to rotate at extreme speeds, and you've got a walking death sentence for any surviving Jedi. He survived Order 66 and pledged himself to Vader on Mustafar, becoming the director of the entire Inquisitorious program. He wasn't just another enforcer, he was the guy calling the shots on every Jedi hunt in the galaxy. But here's where it gets tragic. After all of that, after years of being the Empire's most effective Jedi killer, he was defeated by Kanan Jarrus. Not a Jedi Master, not Ahsoka Tano, a half-trained former Padawan who never even completed his training, and his death still divides fans to this day. When he fell from that platform, was it desperation? Was it the terror of facing Vader's punishment for failure? Or did he choose it? Some believe he looked at what he'd become, realized there was no version of his future that didn't end in suffering, and simply let go. Either way, his story sets the tone for every Inquisitor that follows. But the next one might be even more heartbreaking. Second Sister. Trilla Suduri had a name. She had a master, Sari Junda. She had a life as a Padawan during the Clone Wars. And then Order 66 took every single piece of that away from her. But here's the thing, the clones didn't break Trilla. The Empire didn't break Trilla. Her own master did. Sari Junda, the person who should have protected her above anyone else, broke under Imperial torture and gave up Trilla's location, handed her over to be tortured until the dark side was the only thing left. Trilla didn't choose to fall. The fall was done to her by the one person she trusted most, and that's what makes her so devastating as the main antagonist of Jedi, Fallen Order. She's not some power-hungry Sith wannabe. She's a warning. She's what happens when the Inquisitorial program works exactly as intended, taking a Jedi with potential and grinding them down into a weapon. Vader's weapon, specifically. Within the Inquisitor hierarchy, Trilla operated as his closest enforcer, functionally his right hand. Even her lightsaber reflected something different about her, a curved hilt design that set her apart from every other Inquisitor visually, more personal, more refined, like she was still holding onto some fragment of identity even while serving the thing that destroyed her. Cal Kestis kills her on Fortress Inquisitorius in 14 BBY, but it's her final moment that still haunts people. Right before Vader cuts her down, she breaks through. Just for a second. You can see it in her face. Trilla Suduri is still in there, buried under years of torture and conditioning, and she surfaces just long enough to lose everything for the last time. Fans don't debate whether she was a good villain, they debate whether she was a villain at all, and that argument is one of the most emotionally resonant things Fallen Order ever produced. But if Trilla's story is about stolen agency, the Third Sister's story is about someone who tried to steal it back. Third Sister, every other Inquisitor on this list broke. They were captured, tortured, and twisted until they served the Empire. Reva Savander is the exception, and that changes everything about how you read her character. She survived Order 66 as a youngling. Her entire clan was slaughtered around her, and she lived by playing dead among the bodies of children she'd grown up with. Let that sink in. A child, lying motionless in a pile of her dead friends, listening to clone troopers confirm the kill. She carried that trauma forward and turned it into a plan. Here's what makes Reva unique. She didn't join the Inquisitorius because she was broken into submission. She joined because she wanted to get close enough to Darth Vader to kill him. The entire career, every act of cruelty, every display of loyalty was a long con. She was a spy inside her own organization, and she was good at it. Throughout the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, she outmaneuvers other Inquisitors politically, climbs the ranks faster than anyone expects, artifacts, and plays the role of ruthless enforcer so convincingly that nobody suspects her real motive. Her weapon is a red double-bladed spinning saber like the rest, but her actual weapon is manipulation. But the con collapses. She gets her shot at Vader and it's not enough. He's too powerful. She survives barely, and the series ends with Obi-Wan sparing her life rather than finishing her off. She walks away from the Empire and her vendetta, one of the very few Inquisitors who gets something resembling an exit. Now, the fandom debate. Some viewers see Reva's arc as the most human story in the entire Inquisitor roster, a traumatized child who spent years pretending to be a monster to kill the man who destroyed her life. Others found her writing inconsistent, her plans illogical, her survival unearned. That argument is still going strong years later, and honestly, both sides have points. But whether you love her arc or hate it, nobody else on this list infiltrated the program on purpose. That alone makes her worth remembering. Speaking of Inquisitors who leave less of an impression, the Fourth Sister is a very different story. Fourth Sister. Here's the thing about the Fourth Sister. There's almost nothing to say about her. And that's exactly why she's worth talking about. She operated during the Imperial era, roughly 9 BBY, showing up in live action and animated materials. She hunted Force-sensitive individuals across multiple star systems. She followed standard Inquisitor protocol. She was competent. And then she faded from the story without fanfare. Her ultimate fate left completely unknown, and the galaxy kept moving without looking back. No dramatic send-off, no redemption arc, no betrayal, just silence. But here's where it gets interesting. We know almost nothing about her inner world. She's a Nagratu named Lyn Rakish, sure, but no named Jedi Master, no flashback to her fall, no moment where she hesitated or questioned her loyalty. She's a rank and a red lightsaber, and that's about it. And that blankness? That's not lazy writing. That's the Inquisitorial program working exactly as intended. Every other Inquisitor on this list has something, some fragment of who they were before Vader's people broke them down. A name, a grudge, a flicker of the person they used to be. Fourth Sister has almost none of that. She was so thoroughly consumed by the program that barely any identity survived. No real story, no legacy, just a number and a sequence. She's what happens when the Empire wins completely. Not a dramatic villain, not a tragic figure, just a tool that got used up and discarded. The program didn't fail with her. It succeeded, and that might be the most disturbing thing about any Inquisitor on this list. But if Fourth Sister represents total erasure, the Fifth Brother is proof that even the Empire's most obedient weapons still had cracks. Fifth Brother. Here's the thing about Fifth Brother. On his own, he's fine. Green skin, intimidating frame, spinning lightsaber, Force acrobatics. He checks every box an Inquisitor needs to check. But fine doesn't get you remembered. What gets you remembered is chemistry, and Fifth Brother had it, just not with the audience. Almost every single mission Fifth Brother runs, in Rebels Season 2, he's paired with Seventh Sister, and the two of them together are genuinely entertaining in a way that neither one earns alone. They bicker, they compete, they undermine each other mid-hunt like two coworkers who can't stand sharing credit but also can't function apart. It's a buddy cop dynamic dropped into a program built on isolation and fear, and that contradiction is exactly what makes it work. Think about what the Inquisitorius actually is. These are former Jedi, tortured into compliance, trained to trust nobody, serving a master who would kill them for showing weakness. And somehow, despite all of that, Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister developed something that looks suspiciously like a bond. Whether it was romantic, pragmatic, or just two broken people clinging to the only constant in their lives, fans have debated it for years. The show never confirms anything. It doesn't have to, because both of them die in the same episode. Twilight of the Apprentice ends their story together. Maul cuts through them like their warm-up rounds. And honestly, getting killed by Maul isn't embarrassing. He's a former Sith apprentice operating at a level no Inquisitor was ever built to match. But dying side by side either makes their partnership tragic or confirms they were always heading toward the same dead end. Either way, it hits harder than it should for two characters with zero backstory. But if you think their lack of depth is notable, wait until you meet the Inquisitor who makes Fifth Brother look like a fully realized character. Sixth Brother. Here's where the Inquisitor roster starts getting honest about its own gaps. The Sixth Brother is a confirmed former Jedi Knight, which means he had real lightsaber training, real combat experience, and a real fall from grace. That foundation puts him a step above some Inquisitors whose pre-Empire lives are basically blank pages, but knowing what he actually did with that training, that's where things get murky. The sixth brother exists primarily in supplementary material, not television, not film. His most significant appearance is in the 2016 Ahsoka novel, with further development coming through the Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith comic series. And in the current era of Star Wars canon, that distinction matters more than people want to admit. Everything Disney publishes is technically canon, all on equal footing, one unified timeline. That's the official line. But let's be real. A character whose biggest moment lives in a novel that maybe a few 100,000 people read does not carry the same weight as someone who shows up in a show watched by millions. The sixth brother lives in that gap. He wields the standard red spinning double-bladed lightsaber. He demonstrates significant force capabilities. He hunts targets during the early Imperial era, like every other Inquisitor on the payroll. His death at Ahsoka Tano's hands on Rada is documented in the Ahsoka novel, and it hits hard on the page, but it never got the visual spectacle of a screen adaptation. None of this is disputed, but none of it is deeply fleshed out either, and that's actually the interesting thing about him. The sixth brother represents something real about how Star Wars manages its extended universe. Some Inquisitors get full arcs, voice actors, emotional death scenes. Others get a novel appearance and a name. He's not Legends content that got wiped from canon. He's fully legitimate, but he's also barely sketched in, sitting right at the boundary between real character and placeholder with a number, which makes him the perfect contrast to the next Inquisitor on this list, because the seventh sister. She got the full treatment. Seventh sister. The Mirielin angle matters more than most people realize. Mirielins have one of the deepest Jedi legacies of any species in Star Wars. Luminara Unduli, Barriss Offee, both iconic, both deeply tied to the Jedi Order's identity. So when a green-skinned Mirielan shows up wielding a red spinning lightsaber and hunting Jedi for the Empire, that's not just another Inquisitor. That's a species-level betrayal of heritage, and she leaned into it. Seventh Sister was the tactical brain of Rebels Season 2's Inquisitor threat, where Fifth Brother showed up swinging and hoping raw power would solve the problem. She operated through patience, misdirection, and psychological pressure. She'd let her targets make mistakes instead of forcing confrontations. Her lightsaber even reflected this. Slightly shorter proportions than her peers, built for agility and precision, rather than overwhelming force. Everything about her design said, I will outthink you before I outfight you. But here's the thing, she's never more interesting than when she's standing next to Fifth Brother. That partnership defined both characters. They bickered constantly, competed for results, undermined each other's methods, and somehow complemented each other perfectly. He was the hammer, she was the scalpel. Neither one worked nearly as well alone, and the writers clearly knew it because they were almost never separated on screen, which makes their deaths hit differently. Maul killed them both in Twilight of the Apprentice. Same scene, same opponent, same mission, the strategist and the brute cut down in the same breath. Whether that's poetic symmetry or just brutal efficiency depends entirely on how you read their relationship. Fans have speculated for years that there was something deeper between them. Lucasfilm has never confirmed or denied it. The subtext stays exactly where it is, permanently open. But at least Seventh Sister died alongside someone she knew. The next Inquisitor wasn't nearly that lucky. Eighth Brother. Here's the thing about the Eighth Brother. Strip away one detail and there's almost nothing to talk about. But that one detail is genuinely fascinating, and nobody seems to address it. The Eighth Brother is a Pau'an, the same species as the Grand Inquisitor, and in a program with roughly 12 named members across the entire canon, 2 of them being from the same species is either a coincidence or a pattern. The Empire wasn't exactly known for its love of alien diversity. Palpatine's regime was openly human supremacist in almost every branch of Imperial power. Non-human officers were rare. Non-human agents were rarer. So having 2 Pau'ans in the Inquisitorius isn't just a fun trivia fact. It raises a real question. Were Pau'ans specifically targeted for recruitment? Canon never answers this. Not once. There's no line of dialogue, no databank entry, no comic panel that explains why 2 members of a relatively uncommon species ended up in the same elite force hunting unit. Some fans speculate that Pau'an physiology, their long lifespans and natural intimidation factor made them ideal candidates. Others think it's just a writing coincidence that nobody at Lucasfilm bothered to address. Both explanations are equally possible, and that's the frustrating part. Beyond the species question, the eighth brother is about as thin as Inquisitors get. Standard red-spinning, double-bladed lightsaber. Standard force abilities. He shows up in Rebels adjacent material, operates during the mid-rebellion period around 3 to 2 BBY, and gets killed in action against Rebel forces. That's it. No tragic backstory. No rivalry with a protagonist. No memorable last stand. He exists, he fights, he dies. And the only interesting thing he leaves behind is a question about his own species that the franchise has never bothered to answer. But if you want an Inquisitor with actual substance behind the number, the Ninth Sister delivers that, and then some. Ninth Sister. Everyone talks about Second Sister. Her tragic fall, her betrayal, her final moment of resistance before Vader cuts her down. She's the emotional core of Jedi, Fallen Order, and one of the most sympathized with villains in modern Star Wars. But while Trilla gets all the emotional weight, Ninth Sister is quietly one of the most underappreciated Inquisitors on the roster. Here's the thing. Trilla Suduri's fall happened because her master, Siri Junda, broke under Imperial torture and gave up her Padawan's location. That betrayal, that abandonment by the one person who was supposed to protect her, is what shattered Trilla and turned her into the Second Sister. It's one of the most gut-wrenching backstories in modern Star Wars, but Ninth Sister, she didn't need a tragic betrayal to be dangerous. She was just built different, literally. A Dawitan, she was the largest and most imposing Inquisitor ever fielded. No finesse, no cunning strategies, pure raw power, force push, brute durability, overwhelming strength. She didn't outthink problems, she walked through them. And that made her one of the most physically threatening enforcers the Inquisitorius ever produced, despite never being a main antagonist in anything, which makes her death feel almost uncomfortably fitting. Cal Kestis kills her on Kashyyyk as a mid-game boss. Not the climax, not the final confrontation, a checkpoint. The biggest, most physically dominant Inquisitor in the program gets treated as a mid-level obstacle by the gameplay itself. You fight her at the origin tree, cut her down, and the story barely pauses to acknowledge it before pushing you forward. Fans still debate whether that was satisfying karma or whether someone this physically imposing deserved a bigger reckoning. Either way, she went out not with a dramatic last stand, but as a speed bump on Cal's journey to something bigger. But if Ninth Sister feels underused for her presence, wait until you meet an Inquisitor who barely registers as existing at all. 10th Brother. Here's the thing about the 10th Brother. We actually know exactly who he was. His name was Prosit Dibs, a Miraluka Jedi who was blind but could see through the Force. He questioned the Jedi Council's role in the Clone Wars, accused them of being complicit in suffering, and was put on trial by his own order for it, and then the Empire turned him into a number. That's what makes the 10th Brother hit different from every other Inquisitor on this list. He wasn't some anonymous fallen Jedi with a mysterious past. His fall is fully documented. He challenged the Jedi punished him for it, and the Empire scooped up what was left. You can trace the pipeline from disillusioned knight to Inquisitor, almost step by step. He carried dual Shoto lightsabers, not the standard spinning double-bladed weapon most Inquisitors used. Even his gear set him apart, but none of that individuality saved him. His death is one of the most undignified in the entire program. During a mission on Mon Cala, a Padawan named Farron Barr used the Force to mind-trick the Purge troopers accompanying him. The clones turned on the 10th Brother and gunned him down. No duel, no last stand, no final words. His own escort killed him because a Padawan told them to. Order 66 happened to him twice. Look at every other Inquisitor on this list. Trilla got a redemption beat. Reva got an entire series. The Grand Inquisitor got a death scene that still haunts people. Even the 8th Brother got to fall off a temple. The 10th Brother got shot in the back by his own troops. Community lists ranking every Inquisitor frequently leave him off entirely, not out of disrespect, but because his story feels too bleak to dwell on. He is the program's darkest implication made real. Not through horror or spectacle, but through a complete system that takes a principled man, strips his name, hands him a rank, and disposes of him without ceremony. But if the 10th Brother shows how the Empire discarded its tools, the next Inquisitor proves that even the ones buried in obscure corners of canon can still surprise you. 13th Sister. This is where the story gets personal. Every Inquisitor we've talked about so far has a gap. You know the title, maybe the species, maybe a couple of missions, but the actual journey from Jedi to Inquisitor usually left vague. A few lines about falling to the dark side, some implied torture, and that's it. Fill in the blanks yourself. The 13th sister doesn't leave blanks. Not even close. Her real name is Iskat Akaris, and her full story is laid out in the novel Inquisitor, Rise of the Red Blade. She was a Jedi Padawan during the Clone Wars, trained at the Temple, fought alongside clones, did everything a Jedi was supposed to do, but she never quite fit. She struggled with emotions the Jedi Order told her to suppress, felt disconnected from the teachings, and carried a darkness she couldn't explain. Here's why that matters. Most Inquisitors were broken, tortured by Vader until they submitted. The standard narrative is clean. The Empire captured surviving Jedi after Order 66, shattered their will, and rebuilt them as weapons. But Iskat's fall wasn't purely manufactured. The cracks were already there. When Order 66 hit and the Empire rose, she didn't just comply under duress. Part of her was already leaning toward the dark side. The Inquisitorius gave her permission to stop pretending. That reframes everything. The dark side didn't just seize broken Jedi and force them into service. Some of them were already fracturing under the Jedi Order's own rigidity. Palpatine didn't have to create every monster from scratch. He just had to open the door for people the Jedi had already failed. Now her story ends the way most Inquisitor stories end. Badly. She was killed by Darth Vader himself around 14 BBY during the early Imperial period. Vader didn't tolerate weakness, and he tolerated independence even less. She appears in the Darth Vader comics as well, but the novel is where her real depth lives. If your Star Wars knowledge comes from the films and shows, you've almost certainly never heard of her, but that's exactly what makes her fascinating. She's the proof that the Inquisitor pipeline wasn't just about torture and submission. It was about exploiting people the Jedi Order had already let down. And if someone like Iskat could fall that naturally, the question isn't how many Inquisitors the Empire created. It's how many were already halfway there before Order 66 even happened. Speaking of Inquisitors shrouded in mystery, there's one whose identity is still completely unknown: Marok. Every Inquisitor on this list has a name, a face, a fall, a death. Marok has none of that. And that's exactly why he's last. Marok appears in the Ahsoka series, showing up in the very first episode and doing everything an Inquisitor should do. He fights, he hunts, he serves as muscle for Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati with cold efficiency. He's skilled with a lightsaber, credible as a threat every time he's on screen, and carries himself like someone with a history the audience isn't allowed to access. And then he dies in episode 4, and everything gets weirder. Here's the thing. When Ahsoka strikes him down, his body doesn't collapse. It dissolves into green mist. Night Sister magic. No face reveal. No dramatic unmasking. No dying words. Just a burst of spectral energy and an empty suit of armor. The show confirmed that whatever Marok was by the end, he was being animated by Night Sister sorcery. He wasn't just wearing the armor. He was being puppeted inside it. That makes him unique. He is the only major Inquisitor in the entire canon whose true identity remains functionally unresolved. We know what was keeping him moving, but who was he before the magic? Was he a real Inquisitor who died and got reanimated? A corpse stuffed into the suit as a weapon? Someone who never held the title at all? Every other name on this list, you can trace the line. Jedi to Inquisitor to death. Beginning, middle, end. Marok doesn't have that. He's a half-answered question in a franchise that usually can't resist over-explaining its own mysteries. The fan theories are exactly what you'd expect. Some people think he's an obscure comic character given a live-action role. Others think he was a previously established Force user before the Night Sisters got their hands on him. Some are convinced his identity is a reveal Lucasfilm is saving for a future project. The community has not reached consensus, and honestly, they probably won't until someone decides it's time to pull the trigger. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a real divide in the fandom about whether they even want the answer. Some fans are desperate for the reveal, convinced the mystery only matters if it pays off. Others argue the opposite, that once you put a name and a face behind the mask, Marok becomes just another entry on the list. Another broken Jedi, another tragic backstory, another death. And that debate mirrors something bigger about Star Wars itself. How much mystery should stay mysterious? Think about what the Inquisitorius actually is. A program built on erasing identity. Every person who enters loses their name, their history, their connection to who they were. Every Inquisitor on this list had their identity stripped away and then eventually handed back to the audience through flashbacks or supplemental material. Marok is the only one where the erasure is still complete. We saw the green mist, but the person underneath, if there even was one left, was never given to us. Whether that's a mystery waiting to be solved or an intentional void that says everything it needs to say depends entirely on what comes next. Either way, the mask stayed on, right until the end. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.